The following is a Hoop Ball presentation. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
I got no love for daylight savings time, ladies and gentlemen. And the way that you can tell is because I mispronounced it right out of the chute. It's actually just daylight saving time. I didn't know that until fairly recently. I feel like everybody possessives it. Daylight savings time. No, savings is like what your bank account maybe is. This is actually daylight saving time, and it's the worst. It's the worst thing ever. I used to really love the fall back because you got that one extra hour of sleep. But you know who doesn't love the fall back? Toddlers. They don't know. They wake up with the sun like a damn rooster, and so all the days begin earlier. Screw you, daylight saving time, and happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Figured I'd go full bitter old man to start the Thanksgiving episode here on Fantasy NBA Today. Dan Vespers, pleasure to make your acquaintance on this Thursday morning, November the 22nd, 2018. Thanksgiving Day here has come. The plans are solidified. I'm sure all of you are traveling across either the country or the state or whatever it is. Many of you perhaps hosting Thanksgiving. I'd like to start this episode by throwing it back. Come with me back a few years, back to 2003. Dan Vespers, your lovely host, was but a junior in Berkeley, California, and we decided to host a Thanksgiving at our apartment, which we affectionately called the Chesterfield for reasons unknown, because it was Berkeley and you existed in a purple haze. We invited over 20 of our closest friends and baked a turkey, and lo and behold, it actually worked. It actually worked. To this day, I have no idea if any of the food was good, because everybody was high out of their minds. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Maybe I should have told that at the end of the show, since half of you are going to be like, I'm never listening to this thing again. This man's an idiot. And you'd be right. Coming up on today's podcast, we got a massive Wednesday to look back at. And frankly, that might end up taking up the whole show. I also put out a little clarion call last minute for some mailbag questions. Figured we'd get a few of those coming in here as we're recording the podcast. This is what happens on Thanksgiving morning. You forget to do some stuff. And then it comes back to bite you a little bit. Luckily, many of you got a chance to read my world's longest tweet storm last night. That one took a long time to put together. You can tell how long it put together because I had to take a 10-minute break in the middle to read my kid a book so he could go to sleep. It was a beast, man. So thank you to everybody that has been reading these tweet storms. Thank you to the 40-some-odd of you that actually retweeted the first tweet in that storm. I know that's sort of the thing we're doing right now. I've got the tweet storm, and then in the first tweet of it, I tend to put out a little, okay, here's our request of the day. If you're going to enjoy the next 30 tweets I'm about to put out with a full nightly breakdown, here's the small request I have. And a lot of you were kind enough to actually do it daily. You've been doing it, so thank you. That's amazing. I am thankful for you guys, for sure. It's pretty sweet. That's pretty sweet. So that one had a big, beastly following. I hope everybody got to enjoy that. If you're not getting my nightly tweet storms, I suggest you sign up for a Twitter account, twitter.com, and follow me, at Dan Vespers, DanBesbris. Hello to those listening on Dash Radio, whether it's on your mobile device or in a car or whatever other thing people can listen to stuff in these days. And yes, I did say stuffin' because it's Thanksgiving. And because, I love our guys over at the ITL. They're stuffing things. I wonder if they're going to do a stuffing things episode today for Thanksgiving. I hope so. I'll shoot them a text message, see if they've already used that pun. I'm guessing they have. So yes, massive Wednesday card. Possibility that we'll get into some mailbag questions on today's show, depending on how long we spend going over the large storylines from yesterday. No games tonight. No games on Thanksgiving, so you got no homework this evening. But then, tomorrow, you have the biggest card of the NBA season. 13 games on Friday. That is everybody but 2. Bonus points, by the way, if you can figure out what teams are not playing on Friday. I know we played this game yesterday, but bonus points. And don't look at your fantasy team. Don't go to that. I could do that too. We can all do that. You go to your team and you're like, okay, which of these guys isn't playing tomorrow? I figured it out. All right, bonus points if you can figure out who's not playing on Friday. It's only 2 out of the 30 teams. I'm not going to even tell you what day it is, because if I told you what day it is, you'd be able to figure it out. Very simple. All right, we'll give you that answer in about a minute. That's going to be an interesting one. So the thing about that Friday card, and looking ahead a tiny bit, and we can meander a little on today's show since it is a little bit less structured than usual. It's Thanksgiving morning, after all. There are some early games on Friday, day after Thanksgiving. The Clippers and the Lakers both play at Staples Center 7 hours apart. Clippers are playing at 12:30, a day game, and the Lakers got the night contest at 7:30. They're hosting Utah. Brooklyn is hosting a 1 p.m. Eastern game on Friday morning. So this is your day in advance warning. Set your Friday lineups today. Don't wait until tomorrow morning, especially for those of you here on the West Coast. You might be sleeping in on Friday after Thanksgiving. You might just be turkey stuffed and sick to your stomach and up half the night with bowel distress. I might be projecting a little bit on that one, but make sure, especially if you have anybody in that first game, it's Minnesota and Brooklyn. It's a 9 a.m. Excuse me, I said 1 p.m. East Coast. It's actually noon East Coast time. And the Clippers game, I was off by 1 hour on each of those things. So that's a 9 a.m. Pacific Coast start. It's Minnesota and Brooklyn. And I'm betting a lot of you listening have at least one guy on those teams because, first of all, there's a lot of question marks in Brooklyn. So a lot of guys are bouncing on and off rosters. And then Minnesota, you got like 6 guys right now where you're thinking, well, he could end up on my team. So if you got Derrick Rose or Cat or whoever it is, or Dinwiddie, check your lineups today. Make that something you do before you head off to Thanksgiving. Then you can, if you have time to go back later and check out your lineup a second time, that's fine. You can go do that. But just make sure it's set. So if you forget about it and you sleep in, you don't end up accidentally not starting guys or just goofing and starting the wrong guys. Prep. A little bit of prep work goes a long way in this world. So that's my only advice for Friday, and then, you sit back and enjoy the madness. By the way, good piece of news. I think I mentioned it on yesterday's podcast. I'll bring it back up here at the beginning of this one, since, again, we're not going anywhere. You got nothing to do. Just sitting around waiting for the afternoon and food time to begin. We will have a DraftKings contest this week. It's not an officially sanctioned one. They said it's fine, you can do it, but it's not a DraftKings official Hoop Ball Beat the Expert contest. It's kind of an off-the-books. Micah Patria said, look, like a lot of people have come to me and said, we still want to do a contest this week. Can I just set one up? DraftKings said, fine, and obviously we said, of course. And so Micah Patria, tomorrow morning, Friday morning, is going to open up a DraftKings room and get me the link and get Brew the link, and we'll get that to all of you guys as well. We'll do our best to tweet the crap out of it, make sure anybody that knows a contest is going can get in there. The difference between this one and the official one is that Mike's going to set the breakdown on how the contest is run, basically who wins, how many slots there are, whatever. There's no Hoop Ball t-shirt going to the overall winner. This is just a cash-only contest. And it doesn't count as one of the official contests, because if you sign up for a new account at DraftKings and you put $5 in your account, they give you a free ticket, basically. You get a free ticket to hop into one of their $3 official contests. So this would not be used on that. You'd have to use actual $3 from the account. Reminder, of course, if you navigate to DraftKings through the Hoop Ball portal, meaning go to hoop-ball.com, click on the Premium tab, choose Go Premium, and then get it free. And if you go to DraftKings, there's a link on that page. You can navigate through and open a new account with $10 in it at DraftKings. You get the in-season premium membership at Hoop Ball absolutely free. I will remind you of this later on in this episode again. Again, this is Fantasy NBA Today. I'm Dan Baspers. You can follow all of the goodies on Twitter at Dan Baspers, at HoopBallFantasy, at HoopBallTweets. And of course, if you have a moment, I know this is a long intro, but again, we got nowhere to go. If you have a moment, this is my Bended Knee segment. Please rate and review the podcast. Subscribe to the show. We love all the positive feedback in particular. If you have something that you have, if there's constructive criticism, I mean, you could put it in the feedback, but honestly, it'd be easier just to tweet it at me. Let me know. I take everything very seriously. People told me I have too long intros, and 99% of the time, other than today, I think we've done a really good job of hopping right into the stuff very quickly. Someone mentioned that things got too pedantic, and I said, I don't care. That's just who I am. Somebody mentioned that I don't take responsibility for my misses. I feel like I talk about them a lot on this podcast. Someone tweeted at me this morning that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is going to be one of my big misses this year. Listen, if you guys have been listening to the podcast, you know that I have had this weird back and forth on air talking to myself about Gilgeous-Alexander. I am fully torn on this kid. I don't know that we can call this a big miss before anything's happened. We went into a lot of detail on yesterday's show just about the fact that his fantasy game isn't really translating. And it's a weird thing. It's very strange because his shooting percentage is at 47, which is good for a point guard. And listen, fine, we'll take out the first couple weeks where he wasn't playing that well. You could go over just the last 14 days where people have been really high on him. He's still outside the top 135. He has 14 points a game. He has a steal and a block. He's only averaging 2 turnovers. And you look at it and you're like, what the hell is happening here? Well, he doesn't make any three-pointers. He doesn't rebound. He doesn't assist. And he doesn't shoot the free throw all that well. It's a weird... It's almost like an optical illusion with this kid because you know what he is? He's the optical illusion for fantasy enthusiasts, right? Like, looking back at the other side of things, who's a really big popcorn guy? In general, it's Blake Griffin, although to his credit, he's actually playing pretty damn well so far this year. Free throw percent, not as good. Let's use Blake Griffin historically as an example of a big-time popcorn guy. He's averaging 25 points, 10.5 rebounds, 5 assists this year, and 2.5 three-pointers, which doesn't usually fall into that popcorn category. But we'll just take points, rebounds, and assists for now. And a lot of us, those of us in the fantasy community, have kind of written him off as more trouble than he's worth for a few years because he has all the shiny categories, points, rebounds, assists, but he's lacking in the fantasy-friendly categories. The percentages are both not good for him anymore, especially for a power forward and in the field goal spot. The steals are low. The blocks are low. The turnovers are very high. The only sort of fantasy-friendly category where he's been good this year is three-pointers at 2.5. And so a guy like Blake Griffin, we're like, well, we know in general, and I'm sure an injury will befall him at some point. He is playing well right now. So again, I'm not the greatest example for the first month of this year, but in general, you guys know what I'm talking about. In general, we look at Blake Griffin and we're like, well, he's really good in the 3 categories that are shiny, but he's not very good in the other 6 categories that are a little bit less shiny. So we write him off. Gilgeous-Alexander is kind of the opposite of that, which is a weird phenomenon. He's actually good. He's a very good point guard in the field goal percent category, which is sort of a not shiny category. Over the season, he's actually been an 80% foul shooter. He's been worse than that over the last couple of weeks, so we'll call that one a wash. He's been good in steals and blocks. He's averaging 1 steal and 1 block over the last couple of weeks. A little bit less than that on the season, but again, focusing on when he's been more in the starting lineup. Interesting little footnote on Gilgeous-Alexander. He's shooting 50% from the field over the last 2 weeks. That's pretty good. So you've heard me talk about it a million times here on this podcast. I think the new cash categories are the 2 percentages, steals and blocks. I think three-pointers have gotten overrated because basically everybody has them. But if you don't have it, now you are officially a detriment, which is sort of for Gilgeous-Alexander. That's one of the categories where fantasy-ophiles, such as us, we look at it and we're like, okay, well, he's not good there. But the problem is that he's not doing much in the two non-points popcorn categories. So it's this weird reverse where a guy like Blake Griffin is fantastic at points, rebounds, and assists and pretty bad everywhere else. Gilgeous-Alexander is better in the other stuff, but he's terrible at rebounds and assists. And three-pointers. That's the goofy one. But they are opposites in that too. It's a very strange dichotomy that's developed where, by all accounts, if you only looked at the categories that we talk about as being the most important, Shai seems like he should be a really strong value this year. He's very good at field goal percent, steals and blocks. Three-pointers is like the one thing he's not good at in that group. That seems crazy. He's good at some of the most difficult stats to find. He's having a really nice stretch. And yet, because he's been so bad in the other stuff, not points, mind you, not points, he can't get inside that top 100. So I'm not going to get yelled at about this yet. I refuse to. If he turns it up in rebounds and assists, then you got yourself a stew, to quote the great Carl Weathers in Arrested Development. Then you got yourself a stew. So what makes it so a guy like Gilgeous-Alexander, who is good in steals and blocks and field goal percent and points, how come that's not enough? Why is a guy like PJ Tucker ranked in the top 90 and Gilgeous-Alexander is ranked outside the top 130? I mean, PJ Tucker, well, there isn't a whole lot that separates. He's got the three-pointers. His turnovers are lower, but he doesn't score at all. His field goal percent is not as good. Why is that guy higher? Well, the turnovers is one, obviously. Not that Gilgeous-Alexander's been bad in that category, but Tucker's been very good. But he has 5.5 rebounds, and his steals are 1.3 instead of 1. And those little things, just those little tweaks in the hard-to-reach categories, they do make a pretty big difference. So it's a weird blend. And obviously, Gilgeous-Alexander has Tucker in 8 category. We mostly talk about 9 on this podcast. But he is an anomaly, man. He is really an interesting fantasy character. I think there's a usefulness for what he brings to the table. Do you need steals, blocks, and points? That's a strange combination to get from a player. But the numbers don't lie. He's not inside the top 100 over basically any stretch of games unless you just said, hey, was his last one game a top 100 game? Well, yeah. But, so was Noah Vonleh's. And so on and so forth. So it's a weird one, man. I'm not taking any heat for this yet because we are like 2 weeks into him starting, and he hasn't been a top 100 guy yet. So I'm not about to take that one as an L. Frankly, it's closer to a W. I don't know. Got defensive on that one. Maybe it's just because people said I don't admit when I was wrong. Yeah, we miss. Absolutely. I mean, Darren Collison was a guy that I liked this year, and he's been... Well, I can't swear on this. I could swear on this podcast, but I'd have to go back and bleep it myself. So he's been garbage. And yet I'm still hanging on. Indiana as a team has been garbage. I don't know if you guys got a chance to watch their game yesterday, but we will talk about it because I think it's probably time for us to dig into some of yesterday's info. Big storylines. Well, we can't go through all 13 games because, well, that's exhausting. But we'll tackle the most important stuff, and we'll start with game number 1, the early one, Indiana-Charlotte, because Victor Oladipo was out, and so you had to figure that somebody would do something for Indiana, and they didn't. Miles Turner survived this game thanks to 4 blocks. That's always a good number. You throw a 4 up in that column, and it sort of doesn't matter what else you do in the ball game. I would even argue Thad Young was okay in this thing. He didn't get any steals, which was basically the one department where you could have pushed him out in front. But there was a lot of bad in this one. Domantas Sabonis rolled his ankle. He did end up playing again, but fouled out in only 19 minutes, and no one could pick up the slack anyway. Darren Collison played only 24 minutes, just not aggressive at all. I mean, this is like... He's embarrassing himself at this point. He's just gone full passive on this team. And I watched this game start to not quite finish, to blow out when everybody just got pulled for both teams. And Collison looked awful. He looked lost. The Indiana offense was slow and weird. They walk it up the floor almost every time except for a few Doug McDermott threes. That was like the only transition buckets they got the whole freaking game. They're winning with defense right now, and that's actually a really good sign if you like the Pacers, because defense tends to translate pretty well, but they're not fun. They're not a fun team anymore. They walk it up. They run a high pick and roll. If teams are even marginally competent defensively, they can cover this team, and the Hornets did yesterday. Indiana got bailed out by Bojan Bogdanovic hitting 3 difficult three-pointers on his way to 20 points in yesterday's game. He was extremely efficient. McDermott hit 3 himself. If not for those contested threes, this thing would have been a blowout by the second quarter instead of the third. I mean, it was just, and obviously with Oladipo out, that's the guy that bails them out on offense all the time. But Indiana's whole thing last year was get a steal and then run. And they're just not doing it this year. They're taking it out. They get the defensive rebound, and then the point guard comes back to get the basketball. Nobody's looking ahead. It's really weird. They've totally dialed back their offense. And I hate it. And from a fantasy standpoint, it's not a good look. The hope that I have for these guys is dwindling every time I watch them abandon the fast break. All of these other teams in the NBA are trying to play faster, and the Pacers are trying to slow it down, which makes no sense because they're deep and they're talented. I have no idea why they would want to run such a set every time. Run! Get out and go get an easy bucket, for God's sake. For goodness sake, man. Meanwhile, on the other side, Jeremy Lamb is in his stride now, ladies and gentlemen. We definitely said here on the podcast that eventually he would push past Malik Monk, and it has happened. With each passing game, his average minutes played for the season creeps up. He's now a top 55 asset in 9-cat and improving. Over the last 2 weeks, he's the number 30 player in 9-category formats. And I see no reason why that should back off. He's averaging 18 points in that stretch. He's shooting 90% at the foul line, 49% from the field, couple of three-pointers, 6 boards, 2 assists, 1.3 steals. He's been terrific, and he looks like he could be one of the steals of the draft. Marvin Williams, he's actually playing well with Michael Kidd-Gilchrist out. I figured he would be a potential streaming option. I didn't have the stones to do it, but old man Marvin, this is what you were hoping for. And then a lot of guys got involved because, Indy just didn't play well, and good for the Hornets taking advantage. I like Charlotte. I have money on the over with that team, so every time they get a win, I feel good. They're a game over 500 at 9-8, and they're currently the 6th seed in the very top-heavy Eastern Conference playoff structure. Charlotte's number was only 35.5 this year, so they don't even have to be a 500 team. 41 is a 500 team, so they can come 5 wins short of that. And they've already got 9 of them. So they're a quarter of the way there, and the season is not a quarter of the way over. So that, ladies and gentlemen, for simple math for the day, is good. That's good news. New Orleans, Philadelphia. We were watching the Phillies side to see if anything would go on in that power forward battle. Well, Mike Muscala got himself into foul trouble in the first half, so he only played about 8 minutes. And then he only played about 8 minutes in the second half. It seems like they want Wilson Chandler to be that guy at power forward. He had 13 and 6 with a three-pointer, but he went 6 for 7 from the field. He had a usage rate of 8 in this ball game. So I think it might be time for us to just move along. I got a tweet yesterday asking if I should be worried. Not I, but the person writing the tweet said, should I be worried about Jimmy Butler? No. Absolutely not. This is an extraordinary buy low opportunity for Jimmy Butler, who, by the way, is still ranked number 12 in 9-cat on the strength of his outstanding defensive numbers. He's averaging he's averaging 1.8 steals per game with Philadelphia. He was at 2.4 with Minnesota. Overall on the season, he's at 2.2 steals per game. He's also averaging a block per game this year, which is freaking crazy. He's never been at that point, and it's probably going to come down a little bit. It's worth noting that, his number of shots is lower with Philadelphia. In his 5 games with the 76ers, he took 12, 15, 11, 9, and 16 shots. With Minnesota, those numbers were 20, 23, 13, 18, 12. There was a 12 in there. I don't think that you're going to see a Jimmy Butler averaging 12 and a half shots per game. That would be the lowest for him since 2013 with Chicago. What it is worth mentioning is, number one, he's playing about 1 to 2 minutes less per game with Philadelphia, so that actually could impact things a little bit. But more than anything else, the reason you don't need to be worried is that he's a guy joining a brand new team and an established team. An established team where his first job is not going to be to take over the offense. If you want to feel better about the Jimmy Butler outlook, go look at the first 3 weeks of last season with Minnesota. 12, 14, 17, 10, 13, 18, 7, 6, 12 shots. I mean, this gets you into mid-November last year. It wasn't until November 17th he took 19 shots in a win in Dallas. That is a full month he played with the Minnesota Timberwolves where he was sort of being the good boy, as in just trying to fit in. And then all of a sudden he was like, okay, I know where my role is with this team. And then it was 19, 15, 15, 19, 17, 19, 17, 12, 16, 20, 21. He had a 33-shot game blended in there. He's going to be fine. He is beyond elite in defensive stats. He is one of those guys that can average very close to 3 combined steals and blocks per game. We've talked about how rare that is. He's going to average more than likely close to 5 rebounds and 5 assists per game because that's just who he is. Last year it was 5 and 4. So I think pretty simple to get near that number again. And say, well, he's playing with a fantastic rebounder like Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. Well, he's played along some pretty good rebounders before, and he's always been able to get his handful. He's going to get his 5 rebounds. It's going to happen. The steals are going to be there. The blocks sometimes are going to be there. The turnovers are going to actually, believe it or not, come down as he settles in with his new team. He's not taking any 3-pointers right now, and that's fine. I mean, I'm sure you'll see a couple here and there, but he's going to get to the foul line and make a ton of those shots as well. What I will say is, this is a guy in Minnesota who was inside the top 10. I think there's a possibility he falls back towards the top 18. But no, you're not at all concerned about Jimmy Butler. In fact, if somebody's looking at this and thinking, well, he's, last week with his new team, he's a top 40 guy right now. Oh, dear me. You go and you buy low, and I don't know what it would take to get him, but you figure it out as long as you're not paying the same premium as when he was inside the top 10. Severe buy low. Severe buy low. Because even yesterday, in having a truly awful performance from the field, he still had 6 boards, 3 assists, 3 steals, and 1 block. He went 5 for 16 in this game. This is a dude who shoots like 46 to 49%. So basically, 5 for 16. Is that where we're at? I think that's where we were on this thing. Normally, he would make 7 or 8 of those shots. And if we call one of them a 3-pointer, then you're talking about a 26-3 game with a 3-pointer, 3 steals, and 1 block. And then you're like, oh, right. That's Jimmy Butler. He also had 0 turnovers yesterday. So he's doing the things they need him to do right now. And then as he settles in, he's going to start doing the things that he wants to do. Simple enough. Toronto in Atlanta. Jonas Valanciunas got the start in this game and just ate the Hawks alive. I guess you could use barbecue chicken on this one because, they are a bird. 24 points, 13 rebounds, a block for Valanciunas. I don't know why he decided to miss a couple of late free throws to ruin what was otherwise a brilliant fantasy night. Kyle Lowry triple-doubled, so maybe he's going to start to heat back up after that slight cold spell. You guys know he runs hot and cold. And Dan Besper's prodigal son, Danny Green, went just 2 for 10 from the field, but still had 2 threes and 2 steals. And that's why his value will basically never bottom out, because he just gets you those things. He's a top 75 guy. He's just sort of rumbling along these days. And I have no reason to doubt that he won't continue. He played 32 minutes in this game. Oh, but over on the Hawks side, I was just getting ready to say, you know what, I think I understand what's happening with this team. And then Trae Young plays 22 minutes and Jeremy Lin plays 26, has 26 points in 26 minutes. Jeremy Lin, you damn tease you. What a tease, huh? Lord, I wish they just let him play his 24 minutes a night and get this back and forth over with. So here's the thing. This is what needs to happen when you run into a situation like what we're seeing with Jeremy Lin. He had a 13-minute game the previous time out, and it was a bad one. 7 points, 1 assist, and 1 3-pointer. That's not good. The previous 3 games, he had 10 points, 16 twice. He averaged 4 rebounds and almost 5 assists over that stretch, and he had 4 steals in those 3 games. He also had 7 3-pointers in those 3 games. There are going to be the up and down days for Jeremy Lin, but over the last 2 weeks, he's inside the top 80. In 21 minutes per game, he's inside the top 80. He's averaging 14 points, 2.5 rebounds, 3 assists, over a steal, 2 3-pointers. Now, unsustainably, he's shooting 55% over that stretch. Right? That's not going to stick. But this is a guy who's played against starters before, so when he does come in against reserves, he's probably going to play pretty well. He can pick on those guys. He's better than most of the reserve point guards in the NBA. So, we're going to start treating Jeremy Lin a little bit more like Danny Green, actually, where instead of getting caught up in the day-to-day, you look at what he's done at the end of 2 weeks, and you realize, oh, this has been worthwhile. Right? Like, if you look at Danny Green's day-to-day and you see 6 points in yesterday's game, and 4 games back he had a 5.1 3-pointer game, that looks pretty awful. But in between there, in the 3 games in between, he had 3 steals, 2 blocks, and 9 3-pointers. He also had a perfect 7-for-7 shooting game blended in there. It's all about averages. You just have to take it all rolled in together and stop worrying about the individual games. So, Jeremy Lin, add and start. He is spry. He's got his legs back. I know he's only owned in 16% of leagues. He's basically owned in all of my leagues, which is probably because you guys are listening to me hem and haw over him on this podcast for weeks on end. But he's in, man. He is a 9-category. He's a 9-category guy. I know other websites are not saying that's the case, but I think they're looking at the full season, which I admit, he looked awful the first couple weeks of the year. He had no lift, he had no speed, but his legs are coming back, and he is a stat magnet when he's on the floor. And he's been good the month of November. You can look at the month of November, and Jeremy Lin has been worth owning. I don't know why I'm spending so much time on him. You guys know how much I've struggled with Jeremy Lin so far this year. I got to go back like just the month of November, and maybe then we can sort of convince ourselves that he should be owned. I don't know. I don't know what I got to do to get over that hump. There you go. Okay, I got it. Took me a second, but I got it pulled up. In the month of November, Jeremy Lin has played 11 games, and he is number 85 in 9 category. That is ahead of guys like Luka Doncic, Jeff Teague, Enes Kanter, Rudy Gobert, Taurean Prince, Etuan Moore, Jamal Murray, Lou Williams, Miles Turner. Yes, he's in front of these guys. 14 points, 1.6 3-pointers, 1.2 steals, 3 assists per game. Medium to high volume, very good foul shooter over that stretch. Slightly too many turnovers for a guy only playing 20 minutes, but that's always kind of been his MO. So get him in there, guys. It's officially time. I'm done with this. I'm not even going to watch him on a day-to-day anymore because at the end of the week, he's going to be worth using. Moving along. Hardly, right? Hardly moving along. Oh, Dwayne Dedmon, by the way. If Alex Len is out, he's absolutely a must-start guy. Don't worry about your other Hawks. They just got waxed in this ball game. The New York Knicks, that was another one we wanted to talk about from yesterday. It was an interesting one. Trey Burke is riding hot right now. You can roll with that if you want, but just know that the wheels could come off at any moment and just full vanishing act. Noah Vonleh, on the other hand, is back sort of in the good graces. He has struggled with foul trouble at times this year, but when he's starting for this team, he's been worth using for rebounds in particular. He's top 130 overall on the season, which really isn't going to move the needle, and that's largely because he's had these up and down stretches where he was starting and he got into foul trouble 2 games in a row, but on the either side of those games, he played 33, 35, and 39 minutes. That was right at the start of the month. And in those 3 games, he combined for 34 rebounds, 5 steals, and 6 blocks, which is very good. And then they yanked him out of the starting lineup for, 5 games? No, 4 games. And in those 4 games, he had 27 rebounds. So he was under 7 in that stretch. And in those 4 games, he had a total of 2 blocks and 0 steals. And then they moved him back into the starting lineup for the last 3 games. Or did he come off the bench and play 35 minutes in Orlando? Either way, he's played big minutes the last 3 games. And he has 33 rebounds, 3 steals, and 5 blocks. So this is a guy that really seems to need the rhythm of the start of the basketball game. He's also apparently been working on his three-point shot because he's hit 5 over the last 3 games. And he's definitely worth using in that role. Over the last week, he's a top 50 fantasy guy. So, fine. Trot him out there while he's starting, but be aware that he could vanish just like Burke. Kevin Knox, still fairly useless. I know he had 11 and 9 with a couple threes and a block yesterday, but 25 minutes, very low usage. I'm not buying in yet. Maybe they turn him loose later in the year, and if he can handle the field goal percentage stuff that we saw earlier, then maybe there's some wiggle room, but I'm not hanging on in that spot. Enes Kanter you're rolling with. Tim Hardaway Jr. obviously you're rolling with. And then Mitchell Robinson is the guy we've been getting the most questions about. He had a pretty impressive 16 minutes in yesterday's game with 8 points, 4 boards, and 6 blocks on a perfect 4 for 4 shooting, and then promptly got yanked for reasons unknown. He's just not going to play that many minutes right now. So here's the dilemma with Mitchell Robinson. Obviously, the defensive upside is crazy. He has a 6 and a 9 block game under his belt in the last couple of weeks. That's pretty impressive stuff. You usually don't see that from anybody in the NBA, let alone the same guy. 2 different games, not that far apart. But can someone really put up big-time fantasy value in 17 minutes a night? The answer is not really. So, if you are in a capped games format, I'm not sure that you can run him out there with confidence every night. There's a very distinct possibility he plays 9 minutes and doesn't do anything. There's also the other side of the coin where maybe he posts a 6-block game. It's going to be really hard for him to get any points or rebounds or assists not playing many minutes because he's not a high-usage guy. So it's not like he's going to go out there for 16 minutes and take 8 shots. He's going to probably get 4, maybe 5 at most. At most. He's averaging 18 minutes a game for the season right now, and he's taking 3.5 shots in that stretch. So the problem here with a bench roll, and this is the conversation that I've tried to have on Twitter, but it's very difficult to do with the limited character count, is when you're starting, if everything breaks right, you could get up to about 30 minutes a game. When you're coming off the bench, you have to be a very unique kind of basketball player, and usually a guard, by the way, to kind of last more than like 24 minutes, right? So he comes in at, the 3-minute mark of the first quarter. What's your best case scenario there? You think he's really going to play 15 consecutive minutes? No. I think your best case scenario is that he lasts until like the 5-minute mark of the second quarter, which would be fine. That'd be 10 minutes. And if he got 20 minutes total, then I think you'd feel pretty good about using him. But if he picks up a couple of fouls or doesn't play well and he gets yanked early, you're looking at a 5-6 minute stretch in each half. You're just capped on the total number of minutes. Okay? Don't even think about the stats right now. It just makes it really hard to play enough minutes to be hugely fantasy relevant. The blocks are through the roof. And the future for this kid is through the roof. If you're in a capped games format, you try to hang on to him somehow. Put him on your bench, whatever it is. Use him if you're way behind in blocks and just use him as a specialist. If you're in a league where you have to start your guys every single night, I don't know that you can use him there. That's the sort of weird blend. But do try, really do, try to hold on to him if you can. So that's where we sit with Mitchell Robinson. Lakers Cavaliers, we were kind of watching both sides of this game. KCP looks like he's locked into a nice little 3-and-D template while Rajon Rondo is out. For the Cavs, Cedi Osman finally made some shots from the field. He played 42 minutes. This is what we were talking about when we said this is a guy that they want out there a lot. The problem is that his efficiency is not very good. It's just not. He's not an efficient player. He had an efficient game, but it makes him hard to throw out there on a night-to-night basis. But it is also why we're like, look, this is a dude that we're hoping can start to figure some things out because then we'll use him. We'll use him going forward. Can I trust him right now? I mean, maybe. You hope that he gets hot here for a week. Colin Sexton doesn't do anything besides score. And by the way, can we talk about Lonzo Ball's game? The defense he played on Colin Sexton. Sexton took 17 shots and he got to 12 points. Ball had 15, 7, and 6 in this game and just, again, totally shut down one of the other team's primary scoring options. Everybody wants to kill that poor kid, but defensively he's outstanding, and that matters in the NBA. It does. It matters. Cavaliers kept the thing close. Yesterday on the podcast, I said I thought Tristan Thompson would grab over 12 rebounds. He had 15, but heaven, Tristan, couldn't you just walk into a steal or a block or something? You're out there for 30 minutes. You got to just fall into a defensive stat. That's hard to do, by the way, play 30 minutes and not get any defensive stats. Just ask Jordan Clarkson. Minnesota, Dario Saric played most of the second half at power forward. It does look like he's beginning to pull away with that power forward job. Taj Gibson actually played more minutes than Dario in the first half, but only played 7 minutes, I think. No, 6 minutes after the halftime break, and then Saric played like the last, whatever that would be, 18? Is that right? 18 minutes of the second half, I think. Unless he got a very brief breather in there, which I don't remember seeing. Dario did do just barely enough, by the way, to be fantasy relevant in this game with 12 and 7 and a steal and a block, 3 assists. I'm a little bit concerned by the fact that he just doesn't seem like he's settling in on the usage side, but I'm still holding both power forwards to see how this thing really, truly shakes out. You got to wait on it a little bit. Plus, who saw Mason Plumlee's big game going on the other side? Phoenix, Chicago. We were watching Mikal Bridges, who played 29 minutes off the bench. This is why we said don't bail on him. He didn't have a great game by any stretch. 5 points, 4 boards, an assist, and 3 steals. Certainly could have been a lot worse. But this is, of course, also the fear with Bridges. He's not a big-time usage guy, so he's got to find his goodies somewhere else, meaning we need him to make a three-pointer. The 3 steals were awesome, but indeed, there are guys ahead of him in the pecking order. I think this is a guy where you hang on and hope that maybe something gets cleared out in front of him, or maybe he starts to get a little bit more aggressive as the season goes on. But 29 minutes for a guy who can put up sort of like a 3-and-D plus kind of line is somebody that you want to at least give a shot to. I don't really care about the Chicago side. I mean, things are pretty written as of now, and their main guys are still a couple weeks away, so whatever. No, you're not buying into Jabari Parker. Don't. Please don't. Don't buy it. Houston held on, beat Detroit 126-124. James Harden had the line of the night yesterday with 43, 7, and 9. He made all 19 free throws he took in this ball game. Clint Capella, 27 and 15. James Ennis had to step up and do a little more after P.J. Tucker got ejected from this basketball game. Chris Paul had 20 and 7. Do I buy the James Ennis thing? A little bit. But he also took P.J. Tucker's job when P.J. left. Tucker had 6 and 4 with 2 threes, a steal, and a block, and still a quarter and a half of the game left to go. I mean, he was going to see probably another 11 minutes of playing time or more. James Ennis, I don't know that his playing time went up when Tucker went down, but his usage certainly did. And that's the key here. I think there's value in both of those guys. I think Tucker, again, has the first crack at it. He's also the better rebounder of the two of them. But there's a universe where they could both be useful. I think PJ's your top 90 usefulness factor, and Ennis is more like a top 115, 120 usefulness factor. Portland, Milwaukee with throwing that one out. Brooklyn, Dallas. Alan Crabb is worth getting a little bit of a shout-out. He had 27 points on 7 3-pointers in yesterday's game, 2 steals, and a block. Problem with Alan Crabb is that his fantasy game is very limited. So if he doesn't make a bunch of 3-pointers, it's going to be awfully hollow. And these are basically the first defensive stats he's had all year. So 3-point specialist, and that's it. You're not riding with him on a night-to-night basis. Joe Harris is finally starting to cool off. You knew he wasn't going to shoot 55% as a jump shooter all season long. And things are leveling off. D'Angelo Russell, not a great game. This is going to be the back and forth with him. Spencer Dinwiddie still looks pretty good. Ed Davis had 17 and 9, but generally it's going to be Jarrett Allen with this team. He just sort of got outplayed in this one. Memphis, San Antonio, not interested, really. Jaren Jackson Jr. and Michael Green both had foul issues in this game, and so you just sort of move along from that. San Antonio, we have pretty much decided their point guard situation is untenable, and you just move right along from that one as well. Sacramento and Utah. Let's take a moment here with the Sacramento Kings. Nemanja Bjelica now has actually had 2 good games in a row, but the problem here is that he's played a total of 48 minutes in those games. That's not enough to last. He's also made 80% of his shots in those 2 games. That's not going to last either. I am out on Bjelica. I'm out. There's not enough playing time. There's not enough usage on a night-to-night basis. I am in, interestingly enough, on Iman Shumpert. I was concerned that he was going to be a guy that got pushed out when Bogdan Bogdanovic got healthy. That hasn't been the case. Frank Mason, Harry Giles, Justin Jackson, those guys have all lost basically all of their playing time. And the Kings have funneled Bogdan minutes a little bit from a bunch of different guys. So Shumpert gave him, 3, and Jackson gave him 10, and Hield gave him 5, and all this stuff. And it evens out where a lot of these guys still end up with fantasy value. So Shumpert, efficient threes, steals kind of guy. He's been good. Very low turnovers as well. The shooting percentage is not great, but it's very low volume at 43%. He's made his free throws. He's making 2 threes and 1.3 steals a game, and he's turning it over 0.6. So quietly, he's a top 85 guy in 9 category leagues, and I don't really see a way that falls off because his role is very easy to achieve when he's on the floor. He's going to get some 3-point looks because they run like loony bins out there. He's going to get some steals because they play like loony bins out there. And so you roll with it. Likewise for Bogdan, not as many steals, but he's going to score a little bit better than Shump. De'Aaron Fox, he's worth using. I don't know if I'm buying the Marvin Bagley thing. The steals and blocks were nice yesterday, but those are rare for him. And then, of course, Willie Cauley-Stein is totally fine as well. Finally, Oklahoma City and the Golden State Warriors. Nothing really to take away from this ball game. We had the usual suspects, and the Warriors desperately need Steph Curry back. They are kind of terrible without him. So there. Mailbag time. We got 10 minutes for mailbag questions. Thanks, guys, for getting in a few here at the last minute. I know I sort of forgot to remind everybody that it was mailbag time, but you guys came through anyway. Are you surprised? This is from EK33. Are you surprised Willie Hearn is not getting playing time? Is his defense really that bad? So I'll admit to you guys, tracking NBA defense as guys are playing it is not really my forte. He was hurt in yesterday's game, or was it sick? It was either sick or hurt. Either way, he was out for reasons beyond his own inability to play. But at the end of the day, Cody Zeller is just better fundamentally. I know Willie Hernangomez is the better fantasy guy because he can just pile up rebounds. He has a very good rebounding rate, but he doesn't defend properly. He doesn't cover his rotations the way he's supposed to. He's not a great rim protector, which, for a guy like JaVale McGee, who's not perfect with rotations, he can make up for it by being 9.5 feet tall and swatting everything that gets past him. If somebody gets past Willie Hernangomez, that's a layup. Whereas with Cody Zeller, he's a guy that's generally kind of in the right place at the right time. The shame, I guess, is that Zeller doesn't get more opportunity. That is, they just sort of don't need him to do a whole lot on the offensive end, and the Hornets are a gang rebounding team. I like Cody Zeller, though. I mean, he's a solid third-string center on your club, and he's at 0.7 steals and 0.6 blocks per game right now. If you look 2 years ago, he was at 1 steal and 0.9 blocks in about an extra 2 minutes per game. If he got up to that threshold, which was 10.3 points, 6.5 rebounds, a steal and a block, then you're talking about, more of like a top 90 kind of backup center, which is useful. And he's actually gotten way better at the free throw line since then, too. So that's pretty helpful. I think the Hornets like what they have in Zeller. I don't think they're going to push Hernangomez because he's just not as good. And so we're stuck. He's not going to be a thing. Would you drop Bogdan or Jonathan Isaac for Mitchell Robinson in 12-team category leagues? I'm not dropping Jonathan Isaac because he has the same kind of upside as Robinson, and he's going to have an easier path to minutes in Orlando. He also can shoot from outside, which is cool, although, you like Robinson's field goal percent with him not taking any shots that aren't dunks. To me, Bogdan is the question here. Would I drop Bogdan Bogdanovic for Mitchell Robinson? And my answer is no, and it just comes down to playing time. Bogdan is ramped up to 30 minutes a game. He has a very easy top 110 floor, and if things kind of break right for him and the shooting percentage is okay and he falls into a steal a game, he could climb into the top 90, whereas right now, Mitchell Robinson's playing 16 minutes, and he basically needs to average 3 blocks a game to get anywhere near the top 100. It's a really big ask. I get it. The blocks upside is crazy, but he literally does nothing else. He's number 112 in 18 minutes per game. That's averaging a steal and 2 blocks a night and shooting 66%. The field goal percent, by the way, that is sustainable. 0.8 steals and 2 blocks, that's hard to achieve on a night-to-night basis. You have to make sure you're playing the right teams. Teams are going to start game planning for him a little bit. I need Mitchell Robinson getting into the 20s in minutes, and then I would drop almost anyone for him. It's not going to take a whole lot for him to become that kind of guy. If he plays 22 minutes a game, you're talking about a guy going from 18 minutes to 22, basically adding, it's not a full quarter, it's not another 25%, but it's like 23-ish% to everything that he's doing. Then you're talking about a guy that could potentially average 2.5 blocks a game, a guy that could average 6 points and 6 rebounds and 2.5 blocks a game and not turn the ball over. Colossal. But he's a waif. He gets pushed around. He gets into foul trouble. And so right now he's playing half as many minutes as Bogdan. So I'm going with the guy that's playing the big minutes. Just going with the numbers. That question was from Bacardi B, by the way. Question from Chris, who says, what to do with Miles Turner? I'm leading my league in blocks, but he has no trade value. I've tried. You are correct. He has almost no trade value. And so I think you sort of answered your own question. You're sitting on him. You got no choice. He's been awesome in the blocks department, but he's shooting just 46% from the field and just 75% at the free throw line, which is below last year in both categories, despite taking fewer three-pointers. That's the type of thing that should go up. I think he improves in some of those percentages, at which point you probably could move him, or you just ride it out. You know, it's not worth selling a guy like that for pennies on the dollar. He has opportunity. He's getting outplayed on a night-to-night basis by Domantas Sabonis. Does that last all year? Maybe. But I think at this point, if he's on your team already, you just take a shot that at some point things start to click a little bit for him. And he posts, because it'd be really easy for a guy like that to post top 50 value. It takes very little. Instead of making 75% of his free throws, he makes 79. If he could hit 49% of his shots instead of 46, and then all you really need is that to sort of level off the numbers, and then he's scoring 13 points, maybe get him up to 6 rebounds. 13 and 6 with almost 3 blocks a game. That's like Serge Ibaka heyday kind of stuff, and that is a top 50 number. So his leap could happen really fast with just a couple of small percentage bumps. And those could come if Indy would just get out and get a few easy buckets. He's the guy that's really getting killed by that. He hasn't shot over 50% in a ball game since November 3rd. November 3rd, guys. So opportunity is there. He just got to seize it. And it's very close. It's much closer than it feels with Miles Turner. So I would say don't panic. Don't expect him to be the top 30 guy that people were hoping for, and certainly don't expect him to be the top 15 guy that everybody thought maybe last year. Somebody took him at 7 in one of my leagues last season, and rightfully the whole draft room went, whoa, and that didn't work out well, and that team lost, not surprisingly. Brent says, number 1, is it time to pick up Chris Dunn? Absolutely, and I always say in competitive leagues, you aim for these guys about a month out. The latest we've got is that he could be as close as 2 weeks away. That's a huge deal. He's ramping up his on-court non-contact work. I think the hope is that he'll be taking contact by some point next week, and then maybe playing by, what do we think? Like December 10? Is that our target? That's really close, guys. 2 weeks is not far away for a guy that could be a top 50 point guard when he comes back. He has that potential this year on a very bad Bulls team. So, absolutely. Kelly Oubre seems like a luxury stash. He flopped as a starter. Can we do a wait and see? Yeah, Brent, absolutely. He picked up 5 fouls in 12 minutes in that game. I don't think we can say that he flopped as a starter in one game. I'm not going to yell at you, Brent, because I love you. You're one of our loyal guys. But I will point out the folly of saying somebody flopped as a starter after one game. You had to know as you were typing this that I was going to pick on you a little bit. You can't say anything definitively in one game. If he went for 30 and 10, we could say, well, he's thriving as a starter, but still, it would have just been one game. So let's give an opportunity. It sounds like they're going to leave him in the starting lineup for the next little bit because we did get that report that Markieff Morris would keep coming off the bench. And let's find out what he's really expected to do as a starter for the Wizards. Is it going to be 28 minutes, 33? What kind of shots is he going to get? So let's let this go for 3 or 4 games before we make a call. Which side are you on in a Kemba for Kawhi trade? This is from Retox. I am on side Kawhi. I don't think Kemba could possibly play any better. He's due for a regression, and Leonard, who doesn't have that many back-to-backs left, by the way, is always coasting along at a top 10 clip. Folks, that will wrap up our Thanksgiving special live tomorrow on YouTube with the great Aaron Brewski. We'll wrap up the week on Fantasy NBA Today. That show will likely be in the late morning Pacific time after, by the way, that first game goes. Remember, set your lineups for tomorrow right now. Tell them Dan sent you, and keep an eye out for our DFS contest tomorrow morning. Thanks for the questions, everybody. Hope you enjoy your Thanksgiving. Have a big old meal, and don't regret it. So long, everybody.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.